Hi, this is Pat from Winking Cat, and I am so excited to have a special guest today. My guest is meteorologist Nicondra Norwood. I hope I pronounced that right. Such a beautiful.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. And she is a meteorologist with station WVUE in New Orleans,
Mhm.
Fox 8. And first of all, I'm excited to talk with a meteorologist because I love the study of meteorology. What made you interested in that when you were growing up, and how? What was the process?
I've just always been fascinated by weather, and almost every single meteorologist you ever meet will tell you that we wanted to do this since we were little kids. My very first science project I ever did in school, first grade, was about evaporation. When I was in sixth grade, I used to do. And you see, I had a classmate tell me I did it earlier. I don't really remember doing it earlier, but I very much remember Hurricane Gilbert in 1988 and
Okay.
bringing my sixth grade class the tracking chart and going through the presentation. So my teachers very much fostered my weather interest, and my mom is a science teacher, so it kind of all
There
wrapped
you go.
together.
Yeah, yeah. So speaking of that, I know Hurricane Ida, you've had so many hurricanes down in your area come through. What's it like to be as a weather forecaster and a meteorologist with so much responsibility of trying to communicate what people should do and what's happening? What's it like in the newsroom when something like a hurricane comes through?
Well, it's interesting because that's really what we're here for. And we work all year long. And, when it's the good weather days, and it's fun when it's the nice weather days because people are excited and, they want to say, oh, thanks for the great weather. And I always tell them, I don't take credit for the good weather because you guys are going to blame me for the bad stuff.
Yeah.
But, those days, those really high, severe weather days, and especially during hurricane season here, that's where you also just really feel the appreciation that the community has for what we do. It's funny, my husband works in safety as well in the chemical industry, and we talk about how, oh, we both work in safety. We both work in keeping people safe.
That's important. Yeah, very important. So speaking about keeping people safe, our story we're talking about today is Bayou Bug Tales, which takes place in the Bayou in near New Orleans. And I always wonder for people that are around the country, you hear the word bayou. What exactly is a bayou?
Well, that's just another name for a canal or an alley of water. Usually it's natural. It's sometimes like a little river. Matter of fact, a lot of our bayous that move through southeast Louisiana, and a lot of people that even here don't know this, a lot of them are the old channels of the Mississippi River. If you go back and you look at a map of all of our old river deltas,
Hmm.
some of our most famous bayous, like Bayou Lafourche, those are the ones that are really where the Mississippi River used to go before it made those changes thousands of years ago.
Oh wow. And I remember I was down in New Orleans a few years ago with my daughter, and we talked about that a lot of people were telling us about how important it is to keep the bayous healthy and stuff because they actually help protect against hurricanes. How does that work?
Well, it actually is. I mean, that's what built our land. Where we live is built from the sediment from the Mississippi River. And as those areas pushed out towards the Gulf of Mexico, that's the boundary between where the hurricanes come in and then where the people live. And unfortunately, that's gotten a lot smaller over the last 100 years since there's been a lot of, we have the oil companies that cut canals
Mhm.
and just the erosion, the leveeing of the Mississippi River, ironically, to keep people safe for the most part, also is one of the things that keeps us from building the marsh like we naturally do. So it's really important and a big project for us now across the state to try to figure out ways to be able to preserve the wetlands that we have and to hopefully maybe build some.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it sounds neat. I mean, it's always beautiful. I mean, it's such a unique environment. It's always really cool to see it. Um, and
The
speaking of
plant
which,
life, it's animals,
oh,
it's amazing.
oh yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's only certain places in the world, so you got to keep them there so we have them in the future for people to see. Um, I know New Orleans is noted for being hot and sultry and just, the food is hot, the weather's
Mhm.
hot. Has it ever gotten cold enough to snow in New Orleans?
It does. And I think a lot of people are surprised by that. And truthfully, I almost forgot. I grew up here. I grew up in St. James Parish in a town
Oh,
called
cool.
Gramercy.
Hmm.
And I worked away for a few years. I went to school at Mississippi State. So that's kind of North Mississippi. And then I worked in Montgomery and I worked in Memphis. And just that little bit, that's still the South, but that little bit of distance from the Gulf of Mexico does make a huge difference. I remember my first year coming back home, which I've been here 14 years now. I didn't wear a real coat the whole winter. And I said, oh, I forgot, we don't have a whole lot of winter here. But when we do, it can get interesting. And we do have snowfalls around here. Matter of fact, we had one just a couple years ago.
Oh, wow.
And it's, people are always fascinated by it. It's always amazing because we don't see it so much. Everything gets shut down. People up north make fun of us because we get
Uh,
a half an inch and all the roads are closed and
yeah.
all the schools are closed, but we don't have anything that to deal with it. We just don't get it enough to have snow plows or salt trucks and that kind of
Hmm.
thing. So, for us, we really do get the snow day for real. Everybody gets a snow day for anything except us here in the news. We have to go cover it.
Well, yeah, yeah. I sort of, it's hard to believe, but where I live here in Seattle area, we actually don't get a lot of snow. Every once in a while, we get a
Mhm.
nice big dump, and we're like you, we're not used to it, so we have these huge hills. That,
Funny, Seattle's snowfall, if the way it's made,
uh-huh.
is kind of similar to what happens here in the South. We don't really get here in Louisiana along the Gulf Coast. Snow doesn't form the same way it does, say, across the Midwest or in New England.
Hmm.
For us, it's usually when we get a really big cold front that comes in, the cold air is settled in, and then there's a low pressure system that forms offshore and kind of rides over that cold air.
Okay.
And that's where we get a good snowfall.
Yeah.
Seattle's a lot the same kind of pattern. It's not exactly the same, but you
Hmm.
kind of have to have your cold air already in place. And then here comes one of those storms that comes off the water, and then
Yeah.
you can get a good snow.
That's for sure. And we're totally unprepared usually. People make fun of us all over the place, but we're like you. We don't have the snow plows and all the preparation that you need to take care of it. So
Just doesn't happen enough.
no, no. I do have one fun question for you, and this is sort of out of the realm of true meteorology, but sort of still dealing with weather. In the story, Tilly knows it's going to be a bad winter because she sees a big black band around Clarissa the caterpillar's belly. And
Mm.
I know that's an old wives' tale that I've heard for a long time, especially with the woolly bear caterpillars. If their stripe is wide, it's going to be a bad winter. If their stripe is narrow, it's going to be a mild winter. Are there any like old wives' tales that that try and predict the weather?
Well, there's so many. And in truth, a lot more of them do apply a little bit farther north than here because honestly, people like to call us the farthest northern part of the Caribbean. And it's true. We do have very little fall, very little true spring. It's mostly summer. And then our winter is probably like what most people think of as fall. We get a
Hmm.
couple of really cold weeks towards the end of January, the beginning of February. And we have had some serious cold temperatures. I mean, we can get down into the teens and single digits. Matter of fact, our record low temperature is 5, but
Oh
that was
wow.
way back, way back. You have to go back before 1947. I want to say I wrote it down because that was back in the early 1900s before we even took records at the
Wow.
airport. That's where we keep our official records now in the New
Hmm.
Orleans area. But so it can happen. We do get some of those really cold days. And when I talked about we had snow a couple years ago, we had a 20-degree day back in
Oh.
2018. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that was that long ago now. It didn't seem like it was that long ago now. So we
Oh.
can get the cold days.
Yeah.
But I do like to talk about Groundhog's Day. I
Oh,
actually
okay.
sent a note. I sent a note to our zoo one time. We do the nutria at the Audubon Zoo here in New Orleans.
Uh-huh.
And one year, a couple years ago, it was cute. We had a whole thing, but they had our nutria inside.
Oh.
And I said, hey guys, I know it's funny and we kind of joke about it and it's kind of pseudoscience. It's not really science,
Yeah.
but there is some reasoning behind the reason we talk about Groundhog's Day. Because the thing is, when you talk about does the groundhog see his shadow or
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
if he sees a shadow, we say, oh, winter's going to be longer. Well, the reasoning behind that is if you've got a bright sunny day in
Mhm.
February, you usually have a really strong high pressure, beautiful, clear blue skies,
Yeah.
which is going to be cold.
Mhm.
So, oh, we're still in that cold winter pattern. If you don't have bright sunny skies and you got a lot of cloud cover, that's when we're starting to get the low pressure systems. And especially when you're up in New England, they start to get these low pressure systems that ride along the Gulf Stream and you get
Mhm.
lots of clouds and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
get rainy conditions a lot. Well, then groundhog wouldn't see his shadow on those days. Yeah, spring is going to be coming because we're starting to get our spring type storms. So there's a little pseudoscience behind it. So you still got to be outside.
Uh-huh. Definitely.
We still got to
Definitely.
be outside.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, being from Pennsylvania, Puxatawny is up the road, so yeah, and it gets those high pressure systems are so cold.
Mhm. And
I
now a lot of people here, they have an idea that snowfall is associated with hurricanes, and we can't find any real association with that. But we get where it comes from because two of our most famous hurricanes, when you talk about Hurricane Betsy, that was in
Okay.
1964. There was a historic New Year's snowfall in 1963 that,
Huh.
caught everybody's attention. It was snowing
Yeah.
at the Sugar Bowl. Well, in 2004, this was actually a big memory for me. I had come down from I just started working around that time, a few years. So this was one of my first times getting to come home for a whole Christmas vacation for the
Mhm.
whole week and staying for Christmas and New Year's. And it snowed on Christmas Eve.
Oh
And
man.
you remember what I said.
Yeah.
Everything shuts down. So, we couldn't go see our family Christmas Day.
Oh no.
Everybody was kind of like stuck at their own house. And it was magical to have Christmas snow. But,
Yeah.
for me, having been away and wanting to come home and see all my family, we had to hold everything off for a couple of days because you couldn't even get across a bridge. And then,
Oh.
of course, in 2005,
Mhm.
Hurricane Katrina. So that was just two coincidences
Uh-huh.
that kind of stick with people. And we had to tell them just because it snowed. And when it snowed last time, we did not have a big hurricane. So
So speaking of hurricanes, when is the end of hurricane season? Actual officially.
technically, technically, the Atlantic season does not end until November 30th.
Mhm.
Usually for our section of the Gulf Coast, so if we're talking about the Bayou and we're talking about Louisiana, October 1st, which is the day that we're doing this interview, actually,
Yep.
we usually start to feel a little bit more comfortable. We do get hurricanes and tropical storms this time of year, but they're usually maybe a little bit less intense. The weather pattern, we start to get more cold fronts, and Atlantic storms tend to either turn out to sea, like what's happening right now with Hurricane Sam and
Mhm.
Tropical Storm Victor, or a lot of times the storms that end up forming in the Caribbean or in the Gulf, they'll turn out towards Florida. So Florida, if you look at statistics, they get a lot more storms in October. Well, last year for us was a really big outlier. I mean, just it was already a record-breaking hurricane season. We went through all the names, and
Yeah.
then we ended up with Hurricane Zeta. Almost, it was like the week before Halloween.
Oh
That
gosh,
was
yeah.
the strongest storm to hit the United States so late in the season. So hopefully that big outlier stays that way, and it just stays on the record books, and
Yeah.
we can start feeling like, okay, we feel a little bit safer come October 1st, hopefully.
Yeah, get back to the usual system.
Hmm.
Nobody likes surprises.
No, that was not a fun surprise.
So, last question for you. If somebody comes down to New Orleans, what is your favorite recommendation to give people of what they should eat when they come down
Ooh.
to New Orleans?
You know, there's so much.
Yeah.
There's so much to eat, but I think you have to do crawfish because I just
Okay.
think that's one of the things that is so unique to our region. People do it in other places, but they don't do it exactly the same. And,
Mm.
Louisiana crawfish are just going to be better. So you got to try the boiled crawfish. And it's a good challenge for somebody that's never seen them, looked at them, to go and say, okay, how do I eat this?
Yeah, that would be a good question.
Like, wait, I'm supposed to eat this?
But once you do, it's delicious.
Yeah, it's just a little tiny lobster.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
you gotta do the boiled crawfish.
oh, okay, good. Boiled, not fried.
Mhm.
Okay, awesome. I'll remember that because I know my daughter wants to come back so badly. And when we were there, come to think of it, we had there was a day that they had the week that and they had flooding in Bourbon Street, and I remember trucking around in knee deep water on Bourbon Street.
Ooh, I'm trying to think. You
It
know,
was
that
about
doesn't happen a lot.
yeah.
That does not happen a lot. Was it in August?
Yeah,
Was it
it
the
was in
August flood a
August,
couple years ago?
like the
That
beginning
was
of
a
August.
the August 5th,
Hmm.
was it 2019 or 2020?
I think it was
2019. Everything
2019.
blurs together. 2019, because
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was pre-pandemic. So
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
that was a huge rain day. We actually got like 25 inches of rain at one time in some parts of the city. So it
Yeah.
was very unusual.
Oh, I believe it. I believe it. But everybody was still trucking through, which was so amazing and so admirable to me. Everybody's like, okay, whatever. We're just going to do our thing. So,
We're going to make it happen. Well, before the levees and back in the day when the French Quarter was actually built, you know, they didn't really have the levee on the Mississippi. And when you have the regular spring floods, that water used to roll right through the French Quarter and back towards the lake. And
mhm.
those really old buildings were built to really withstand that. They were, you know, the hardwood floors would dry out, the plaster walls would dry out.
Yeah.
Everybody just sweep the mud out and go on about their day.
Yeah, I know the streets were, well, the sidewalks are flagstones, so they dried out pretty quick. Yeah, it wasn't terrible. A matter of fact, my daughter and I had a lot of fun.
It's a different experience.
It definitely is, but that's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah,
Anyway,
I love being from here. I love
aw,
living down here. I'm so glad I was able to come home and do the job that I love here.
awesome, awesome. And I thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. I'm so grateful, and I know the kids will get excited about hearing more about New Orleans.
And can I say one thing, since we are talking about weather and meteorology? You asked me about what made me want to be a meteorologist. And I hear
Hmm.
this all the time. Remember, I said that people that want to be a meteorologist know from the time that they're really little kids.
Hmm.
And I'm so grateful that I get to be one of the ones that I was able to make it through. I also have so many adults that come up to me and say, I wanted to be a meteorologist, but I didn't know about the math. I wasn't good in math, or I wasn't great with science.
Hmm.
All the kids that are listening, do not let that deter you. Just work hard at it as you can. You don't have to be the A plus math student. You just have to get it. You
Yeah,
just
yeah.
have to pass, because you can learn in forecasting. Just do the best that you can. If you want to be a meteorologist, you can do it.
Oh, awesome. That's good advice because I know some kids, especially a lot of kids, think math is so intimidating. But
Mhm.
if you just plow through it and ask for advice when you need it, you can
You'll
get
get it.
through. Yep,
Mhm.
yep. And I'm sure I can't imagine how much fun you have at your job.
It is a fun job.
Right. I want to thank Nicondra Norwood for joining us today. And I know she does an amazing job down there in New Orleans at Fox 8. And you've got to get back to work because I know there's weather waiting for you. So I thank you for your time. And I'm sure our audience really appreciates it.
Thanks for having me.